You know, one of the things that I absolutely love about bells is they always have a story behind them. Whether it was how it was created or when it was created or what it was used for, there's always a story. And then there's a lot of times there's a story about what happened to the bell during its lifetime. Well, the bell I'm going to tell you about in this video is really no exception. It has quite a story, and there is a lot of significance around this bell. My wife saw the bell on one of the local news stations a few months ago, and she told me, says, you really need to go check out this bell. It looks pretty cool. I think you'd like it. So I went online and I found the story, and then I found a site that is built for the bell, actually. It's called honorbell.org, and they tell the story of this bell and what it's used for. And real briefly, in 2013, a guy named Luis Oliveira was at a funeral for a World War II vet. And he said that he noticed that there was no military honor given at this funeral, at this ceremony. And he thought there's got to be something we can do to honor these veterans that served our country. And he came up with the idea of the honor bell. And along the way of getting this bell made, somehow the idea of actually casting medals from veterans that had died into the bell became part of the plan. And what you can see here is there were actually 19 medals donated by 12 different families. They represent the 5 branches of the military service. And these medals were actually transported across state lines by motorcycle clubs that were veterans, clubs of veterans. And along the way at each state line, there was a ceremony, there was a dignified handoff. The medals actually make it to Cincinnati, Ohio, where the Verdun company, they cast bells. Verdun takes possession of the medals, and they actually put the medals into the molten bell metal, and they cast those medals into the bell itself. Now we're going to take a look at how they actually cast this bell in a little bit. There will be a link to the video that shows the process from Verdun as well. Now this first bell made it back to Denver, Colorado, where it has been used in services primarily at Fort Logan National Cemetery in Englewood, Colorado. The bell is actually housed in a van, which allows them to transport it to various sites or to just various grave sites easily within the cemetery. Verdun actually built the special rack that the bell sits on. Bell weighs 1,000 pounds, and it slides out on rollers so that they can actually present the bell, use the bell during the service, and then they can slide it back into the van for its protection. The bell is 37 inches in diameter. It's about 40 inches tall, and it weighs about 1,000 pounds. Now I wanted to actually see the bell, and so what I did is I reached out to the executive director at honorbell.org and just told him, look, here's my story. I'm an amateur bellcaster. I live close by. I would love to come to see the bell and respect it if that's possible. And he agreed. He said, sure, no problem, come down. We worked out a time when the honor guard would not be doing a ceremony. So I drove down on a very cold day, freezing out there. But I met the honor guard as they came, or the bell guard, I guess as they're called, as they came out from the van and they were coming back to a building. I walked out to meet them in the parking lot, and one of the gentlemen that was part of the bell guard stopped and talked to me. And I told him what the story was. He opened the back of the van up, pulled the bell out, and he allowed me to look all around the bell, look at it up close, look at it from the underneath, get a perspective that you wouldn't normally get. And he told me a story about the bell as well that I'll get into in just a second. As I examined the bell, I mentioned that the bell guard told me a story about some damage that had occurred. And when I looked up underneath there, I could see clearly what he was talking about. You can see here, there's a date of the time when the bell was cast, and there's also, I'll call it a serial number, 0001. This is the first bell. And you can see that the letters on the left-hand side of those numbers are kind of smashed, and they're bronze in color, or almost kind of a brassy color, actually. The rest of the inside of the bell has been painted black, but you can see where it hit those numbers. And what had happened is this bolt at the top of the frame that holds the clapper in place and allows it to swing had worked its way loose. Something had come undone, and the clapper, instead of swinging here, had kind of shifted and was swinging in a different location and hitting the bell or striking the bell at those numbers rather than at the intended striking point. The bell guards understood that something was wrong because they could hear the tone wasn't quite right when they did it. And so when they got back, they were able to crawl underneath the bell, inspect it, and they saw exactly what had happened. And they were able to bring somebody in to repair the bolt and repair that clapper frame. And so now the clapper is operating as it's intended. It's hitting the intended striking point. But the damage is clear. I mean, that is clear. If you lay underneath the bell, it's clear you can see it. No one's going to see this damage. And before I leave the clapper, I wanted to take a minute to notice how the clapper is mounted in there. You notice it's not hung from the bell. It's actually hung on an external frame. The bell, which one of the things I think is kind of cool, is the bell is sitting on a pole, so it sits kind of like this. It's not hung from above. It's supported from the bottom. And that clapper hangs off of that main support. And one of the things that this support does is it holds the clapper sort of at an angle so that it's a fixed distance from the side of the bell all the time. So when they ring it, it only has to move that far. What that allows the bell guards to do is that, first of all, that gives them a feel. Is they know exactly, they can pull, and they know how far they have to pull the rope. And if you watch the videos on the Honored Bell website or even the Honored Bell YouTube channel, you'll see that it's just a real short stroke that they use to strike the bell. That gives them also the opportunity to hit the bell evenly each time they do it because they know exactly what it's going to be. They don't have a lot of other energy coming in that they're having to deal with. So actually a pretty cool idea, if you ask me, on how to get this thing to ring in the way that they want to ring it. So next I want to show you a void that is, or a deformation, I call it that, on the inside of the bell. Now you'd never see this if you weren't laying underneath the bell like I did. From the outside, you just see the beautiful face of this bell. But this deformation, and there are others that you can see inside the bell that are similar, not nearly as big as this one, I believe are caused not by shrinkage. I know there's a lot of you that will say, oh, well, that's just shrinkage in the metal. I don't think so. I think this is the result of air being entrained in the metal as it's being poured in. There's turbulence in the bottom, and those pockets of air are coming up. And in this case, it is settled in that spot. That's my opinion. Now, keep in mind, I am just a dork in this garage. I am not a professional bell caster. I don't make hundreds of bells like Verdun does or any other bell foundry. I'm just a dork in this garage. Take that for what it's worth. This is my opinion. You can also see there are similar things on the face of the bell. Now, the face of the bell has been machined. It sounds like Verdun does this with all of their bells, where they put a sort of what looks like a brush surface. It's actually put on there with sanding wheels and things. But it's it's a lined surface. It's a polished surface. It's a beautiful bell. Again, it's a very attractive bell. But if you look up close, you can still see pits in the outside surface of that metal. And again, those pits are not the result of shrinkage. They're the results of something being in the metal. Whether it's pieces of sand, although I just doubt it because of the way they prepare their molds. I don't think it's sand. I think this is entrained oxygen, or entrained air anyway. So this last one is a little bit of a mystery to me. And I'm not quite sure how it happens because you can notice clearly in some of these screenshots, and if you watch their videos, you can see that the star, the seventh star, is a raised star that's actually cast into the surface of the bell. It's not something that was put on later. However, when you look at this picture, you look at the star today, you can see that there's a thin gap between the back of the star and the face of the bell. You can see the line, it's there. The other thing that you can see right in the center of the star is what looks like a brazing spot where they've brazed that star onto the metal, and then the brazing material has now oxidized at a different rate or a different way than the bronze from the bell itself. So the star looks like it was removed for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe as part of the cleaning process, or maybe as part of the machining process. I don't know why it was removed, but there was it appears that that seventh star was brazed on the bell. Doesn't affect the bell. It doesn't, and it still is a stunning bell in my opinion. You can also see in there when you look at the surface of the bell. If you look at, you can see this. The whole surface is sort of uniform, but right around the star, you'll see that it just looks like it's been, I don't know, almost hand sanded or something. It doesn't look quite the same as the rest of the bell. So again, I think that this star has been brazed on. No telling why. If you're an honor bell guy and you know the story, I would love to hear it in the comments or email me. You have my email address. So those are the imperfections I saw in the bell. And like anything else, right? I mean, this bell is beautiful. If you looked at me close enough, you'd see imperfections, believe it or not. This bell is a beautiful bell. And more importantly, you know, it serves an important purpose. It serves a purpose of honoring those men and women that have served our country. So I don't want to take anything away from that. Again, a beautiful bell. The ceremony is beautiful. These men and women honor these veterans as volunteers. They do it out of love for what the veterans have done. So good on you, Honor Bell. Again, it's just a beautiful bell. So I want to look at how they poured this bell. And they don't really show a lot in the video for the actual honor bell itself, but there is another bell, a Minnesota State bell, that got cast where there is a lot of information about how the bell is cast. And looking at the two bells, they were cast the same. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that they were cast the same. And so we'll start off at the top. What you see them doing here is breaking out of the bell a pouring basin. And it looks very much like an offset pouring basin that Professor Campbell and others recommend. In this shot, you can see the basin has been pulled off the casting. It actually breaks loose. And if you pay attention, you can see first of all, there's a ridge inside the basin. So when the metal comes in, it flows, it hits that ridge, and it should rise up before it goes into the sprues. There are two, also, you can notice here too, there are two little broken off, sort of look like knobs there on the bottom of the pouring basin. Those, I believe, are the sprues for getting the metal into the mold. So I did spend quite a bit of time trying to figure out how in the heck did they get this thing poured. A lot of the Verdon videos, you know, they're shot kind of like at this level with the metal pouring into the mold, and all you see is the side of the mold and the metal splashing down on it. You don't get to really see what's going on. And they don't talk about the structure, the gating structure, anything like that, or the vents, anything really too much in their videos. But in watching this Minnesota State bell, you can pick out a lot of things that have happened and a lot of things that are part of it. The first thing that you'll notice is their bells are cast upside down. They're not cast this way, they're cast this direction. You'll also notice their bells are cast in sand. Based on what I read, this is some sort of resin-based sand, so it gets very, very hard. In fact, this bell weighs 1,000 pounds, and you can see when they're lifting it up, they're lifting up the cope. That cope looks like it's, I don't know, you know, 7, 8 inches tall. And it's holding this 1,000-pound bell up by just the sand. It's not supported from the bottom. All that sand is holding it. So it's really strong sand. They take a jackhammer to break this stuff out of there. And then another thing I want you to notice is what they call, in one of the videos, and I think it's in the Minnesota Bell video, they call it a riser. And they state the purpose of this riser is to feed the bell while the bell is shrinking, that collection of metal that's in that riser will come back down and replace metal that's shrinking, right? It'll keep it a full size. Again, I'm the dork in his garage who knows nothing. I don't believe this riser actually does anything. First of all, it seems very, very small to me compared to the overall bell. The other thing is, if you look at the top of the riser, you can see it's pretty flat. It's not like anything is shrunk down or pulled down inside there. It looks like that riser just froze off at the top, and that's what it did. I don't really believe that this riser is acting as a feeder as they suggest. But like I said, I'm just a dork in this garage. Now, you remember those two spots I pointed out on the bottom of the pouring basin? I believe that those two spots correspond to these two spots on the bell itself. And then again, they look like they've just been broken off. I expect that they just went in with a hammer and kind of snapped them off. And my guess is that this is where this metal entered the bell. You'll notice that they're down a little bit lower from the top of the mold. The mold's here, and they're down, you know, whatever it is, somewhere down in this area. And the metal is going to flow into the bell in two spots. The other side, directly across from those two things, you'll see two more broken off round things. I'm not sure what to call them, rods, poles, I don't know what you call them. Anyway, those I believe are the vents, and they're on either side of the, what they call the riser. Those vents, you'll notice, are right on the lip of the bell, so they're at the highest point of the mold, and they're going to allow gas to escape as the bell is filling up with metal. So just look at the difference in where the location of these two things are. The sprues are down lower into the bell, and the vents are up on a higher location on the mold. Now, I built a 3D model to try to put all these pieces together so I could understand what this structure actually looks like. Now, this is a rough, I call it a rough approximation of a bell, but you get the idea, right? It's not exact, but you get the idea of what it is. And as we noted earlier, this thing is cast actually upside down. Now, the first thing I'm going to show here is the pouring basin, where it sits in relation to the top of the bell. And I've got it up a little bit because that, in reality, that's the way it would be. The bell is down inside some sand, and the pouring basin is up a little bit higher than the bell. It's close, but it is a little bit higher. And as I said earlier, attached to one end of that basin, at that raised part on the backside of that ridge, are two sprues that come down. And it looks like they come down at a diagonal, and they enter the bell a little bit below the top of the mold. You know, it's probably 7/8 of the way from the bottom. And you can see how they attach into the bottom of the pouring basin itself as well. So I think that reflects what we've seen so far in the demolding of this Minnesota bell. I think that reflects what we've seen so far. Then these are the vents, and the vents are kind of standalone. They're just attached to the rim of the bell. They come all the way out to the surface. I don't have a great picture of this, but you see this is actually from the honor bell. You see this kid trying to break the mold out. You can see the pouring basin is running vertically there. And right off in one corner, you can see the what looks like the vent coming up out of the sand. There's a hole that comes all the way through. I don't see it on the other side. I don't know if it's because it's too dark or they've already broken the sand. I can't see it on the right side, but we can see it on the left side. And then, of course, there is the riser that that they put on there. So I've got all the components of this bell. The metal is poured into the basin. As I said earlier, it's poured into the basin. It rises up. It comes down those sprues, those diagonal sprues. It comes into the bell. It runs down to the bottom of the bell. I believe, my opinion is it's not a turbulent free flow. It's a pretty rough flow, and I think you're going to see turbulence at the bottom. You're going to see, even as the metal starts to fill up, you're going to see those streams of metal coming in and stirring in that mold. And if it's not stirring, it's running down the side of the bell in rivulets, like you'd see streams of water running down the side of a bowl if you poured water over it. It'd be kind of the same thing. It fills up the bell, and I think that the turbulence might kind of cease as it gets up towards the end of the pour, as the metal comes above the level of the bottom of the sprue. And they're going to just keep pouring until either the bell quits accepting metal or they can see it come up in those vents. And I think that's kind of what they do. They look at both those things. They pour until it quits pouring. You'll see the guys kind of checking the vents out to make sure they can see metal coming up through them. So now, all of that said, first of all, I hope you learned something. I know I sure did. As I examined what was going on with what I saw at the honor bell itself, with what I have seen in the videos that Verdant puts out, understanding how their methodology and how they pour them. You know what? I can sit here again as the dork in his garage, and I can second guess their technology, their methods. The fact of the matter is, they've been pouring bells for well over 100 years, and they've been pretty darn successful at it. Who am I to argue with that, right? When I do my bells, we're going to try some things a little bit differently, but they make some beautiful bells. And if you look at their site, you'll see some of the bells that they've made are just flat out gorgeous. So take a look at the Verdant site. Second thing I want you to realize is this is a beautiful bell. The honor bell is a beautiful bell, and it has got a terrific story and purpose behind it. I have placed links in the description below to every video that I have used to grab screenshots or show things. They will take you to places that you have seen in my video. I've got links to the honorbell.org site. I would highly recommend you go out to that site and just take a look at what they're doing. Read about their purpose, their mission, the people that are doing this work. Read about the story of the bell, what the tolls mean, all those things. It's a great site. And maybe, just maybe, there is something you can do to help them out. This was supposed to be one of many bells, and so far it is still the first bell after 6 years. It's still the only honor bell out there. So it'd be kind of great to be able to see more honor bells showing up. So anyway, that's it. Thanks a lot for watching. I appreciate it. You guys be a blessing to one another. Do something nice for each other. And have a great day.